Comics Controllers, we talk about the new comic from Ed Brisson called The Field, about a guy who's actually in a field. We also talk about the genre of games that are simulators. We simulate a whole conversation about simulated games and simulations and more simulations. It's all about simulations. All that and more on this episode 17, Podcast Simulator. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Comics and Controllers. As always, I'm Kyle, joined by my co-host Steven.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good, Steven. So what do we got on the plate today?
Well, I had a comic book I was hoping we could take a look at. It's called The Field. It's written by Ed Brisson, whom you may recall wrote Sheltered, which we reviewed not too long ago.
Yes.
And it is
Sheltered was pretty good.
Yeah. And it's another book from Image Comics. And as I've been shouting from the rooftops lately, Image has just had some very good stuff going on, and I'm glad to get another one that I think could potentially be a great comic. We only have one issue of it so far, but I kind of want to discuss it because I think it's something that other people might be attracted to as well.
Indeed, and I think Image is doing a pretty good job with some of this stuff because they're pulling maybe writers that aren't as well known, and they're kind of letting them do their independent thing, and there's some really good stories coming out of this. So,
yeah, like I said, it's written by Ed Brisson, and one of the things that I noticed just from the beginning is that the art by Simon Roy, it's odd, but it's a very good kind of odd. That's I usually like a lot art with a lot of detail, very fine lines, bold outlines and everything. But this one kind of has a shaky, almost, I think the best description I can say of it is almost wobbly style.
It's like the old Dr. Katz TV show, Squiggle Vision. That's what they used to call it.
It's not as pronounced as that, though. Like, yeah, Dr. Katz, you could look at it and you're like, oh, this is really different. But this one almost has kind of an illusion that where, if you're kind of far away, it looks pretty normal. But the closer you look at it, like some of the, finer points of like outlines of someone's shirt or the beard or, certain things that, should have a little bit of a curve or, most artists do either straight lines or defined curves. And this one's kind of an undefined, like you said, it's got a squiggle to it, but it comes together really nice. Like I would almost say it'd be the same thing as if an artist tried to do an entire comic in pointillism. That they would never do that because it would take forever. But
for those of us who have no clue what that is, what is that?
Oh, pointillism is where you just make dots. You make thousands of dots, and you form a picture that is, if you look at it from a bit of a distance, it's going to look like the real picture should.
Yeah.
And if you get closer, you can see that it's all just tiny little dots.
There's always that famous painting of that's like on the shore of a river, and there's a bunch of people. I guess they're probably from the Victorian era standing, and it looks fine, but the moment you get right up next to it, you can see every individual dot. So I'm pretty sure that guy only ever did one painting, and that was it, because
it takes forever. Yeah. The other famous one is there's a beautiful painting of a raven, and it's all just because it's monochromatic, and so it's all just different dots that he lightly touched or heavily touched, and that's how he shaded it in. But anyway, the art is really good, and I like when they have the momentary flashback in this one. He makes it blurry because our main character is having some problems remembering things. So the one time we get a flashback, the art style looks just a little bit different. It's just a little bit more blurry, kind of like a fading memory might be. And
coloring's a little bit different too, to acknowledge that, hey, this is a flashback, because you realize you've been taken out of what's going on.
Right. And it's really hard to say what The Field is about, because we, as an audience, don't know very much yet.
Well, the main character doesn't know much, it seems.
Yes, and that's what I was getting to. I remember a time in the mid to late 90s in comics where almost every comic had at least one character who had amnesia. Especially a lot of the independent comics and stuff like that, the smaller companies, like amnesia was like a big thing, that seemed to kind of run rampant for a while.
Well, it's an easy plot point.
Yes, this is a very easy plot point.
Here's a character, I don't have to give you a background for him because he doesn't remember it, and eventually, when I figure out what I want his background to be, I can write an entire story arc or even event that explains it.
Right, and that is so true, and I'm hoping that's not the case with this. I haven't seen many stories lately, with amnesia as like a main key point, and I know there have been. I just personally haven't been reading them. And it's funny, as soon as I wrote an article that said that, of course, next week a new comic came out where the main character had amnesia. just like the universe was trying to spite me. But I like the setup for this one.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and the setup is, simply put, a man wakes up in a field in his underwear. He's wearing some tighty-whities out in the middle of the field, and it's a cornfield. And I'm sure that the actual aspect of this field and the fact that the comic is called The Field, we're going to go back to this field constantly in the series, probably find out more of what happened in this field and why he, ended up there, almost naked. And he has a cell phone that instructs him to run, sends him a text message from an unknown number, that says, it tells him to run at first, and he does that, but then it tells him not to get in this car. But there's one group of people chasing him from one end of the field, and then there's a car that's coming up on the other end of the field, and the guy doesn't try to shoot at him or anything, and he just says, get in.
Yeah.
So he ignores the warning and gets into the car.
Well, the thing with the cell phone, too, is it's that the fact that the cell phone exists and there's somebody sending him these messages about what is going on at that very moment. Like, there are other scenes later on where the cell phone, he gets a message that says, you need to go, or you shouldn't listen, and stuff like that. So, I mean, somebody is either watching him immediately, and they know what's going on, or they're listening in somehow.
Yeah.
Or he's just crazy and he imagines he sees these things on his cell phone.
And that's something I thought of. Because obviously the guy who picks him up in the car, knows who he is, and he's pretty crazy himself.
Yeah, that guy's off the chain.
Actually, that guy is pretty cool. The more I thought about it, he has some of the weirdest dialogue in the entire. He was my
major problem with the story. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to hate on this like I've hated on like everything else we've talked about.
Oh, good. It finally? Okay.
Yeah, I like this, but if I had to choose anything in there I didn't like, it was probably that character and his dialogue. It was very jarring at times, like, because it didn't make sense. But that was probably what they were going for. Is this guy's supposed to just be some psychopath?
This guy's obviously, they want him to stand out as kind of crazy. I think they want him to kind of stand out. There's a religious side to this, which is why at one point he says, I want some finger-licking respect or something like that. I don't remember the exact line. But I think they're trying to really kind of balance several things in this character. And he may have honestly come off too strong. Sometimes crazy needs to be really be done subtly. And I know in a comic that's hard because you only have X number of panels and X number of pages. But I like the character. The end part. Spoiler alert. There's something that character does at the end that made no sense to me. And maybe they'll explain it. Maybe it'll be part of that world. But the end part in the it wasn't a cafe. It was a diner. It was a diner. The end part in the diner just almost it almost felt like it undid a lot of the work that they did, because I liked the character up until that point. And I was like, well, okay, what was that for?
And based on something that another character says in the diner, it's like evidently this guy does this type of thing often.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't. It's kind of odd, like with that character. In doing crazy in comics and even in any other media, it's very difficult because if you go too crazy, you end up with your Jokers, which are like, this guy is so nuts, you should be terrified of him. You don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Or you can mess up and get your Deadpools, which are, he's so kooky and goofy. So it's a fine line that a writer has to walk to actually produce a character that would come across as crazy. Like the kind of crazy you would see in society and be like, yeah, that guy's nuts. I really don't like him, or I don't want to be around him because he terrifies me.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if they quite hit it with that. They get the shock value side of it, so that maybe they end up going more toward Joker than they do towards Deadpool.
I think they did it just fine when he hits him in the car.
Oh yeah, now that's completely nuts.
Yeah, but that's a good. It's not necessarily subtle, but it's not over the top, and it just, I don't know. To me, that part worked really well.
Yeah.
The other aspect is that as the writer, let's assume Brisson has proven himself to be a decent writer so far. So let's assume that he has a plan. He knows where this is going. He's not just going to make it all up later. Mm-hmm. Well, he has to write these two characters, and the guy with amnesia is not hard because he doesn't know anything. But he has to write these two characters, treat them like they do, and do two things. One, he can't accidentally spoil, something else that could happen. You get what I'm saying? Like, he can't accidentally let on. But two, when you get to issue 8 or issue 9 or whenever he does start revealing stuff, he has to make it where you can go back and read issue 1 and it still makes sense. Now that you know the end of the game. You get what I'm saying? That's why shows like, I hate to hark on it, but like TV shows like Lost, like there's a lot of stuff where you're like, oh, well, that was kind of a cool reveal, but if that's the truth, why in episode 2 did Jack not just do this?
Yeah, or even more recently, the How I Met Your Mother finale fiasco.
I haven't watched it yet.
I never watched the show, but supposedly the ending, it has nothing to do with however many seasons. Like, the ending doesn't come, like, the conclusion doesn't even make sense until, like, the last part of the final episode. So it's like the entire show is worthless for explaining this story.
Yeah.
And that's because the writers didn't really probably have an idea. They probably figured maybe we'll get this show that will get a couple seasons out of it, not realizing it's going to become this huge show. And we're going to have to conclude it, and it's going to have to make sense.
Yeah, probably. I had read a thing that they, at least for the last couple of years, had considered multiple different options.
Yeah, I mean,
of who the mother was and how it was going to end and stuff like that.
And very few people do the Battlestar Galactica where I have a story, I'm going to tell it in this number of seasons, and then I'm done with the story. And they know from the beginning and the end. That's not a common American thing. Now overseas it's common in Japan. That's when they start stuff, they know how many episodes they've got, and typically they know how it's going to conclude with anime and manga.
Did you watch Battlestar Galactica?
I did, and I loved it up until the last 15 minutes.
I was about to say, I watched the first 2 seasons, or season and a half, basically, and I kept saying, I'm like, man, I need to go finish that show. Well, it ended, and almost every person I knew that liked the show and watched it, they were like, it was really good up until the last episode. Like, almost everyone unanimously was like, I didn't like the last episode.
Yeah, I mean, that seems about right.
Yeah. And not to get off on a tangent on TV shows, but a great example also is, you ever heard the show Life on Mars?
No.
Okay, basically, in the short version, and I think Dwight's the one who brought this up to me. If you have an ending where it's such a paradigm shift like Life on Mars, it's not good. And what happens in Life on Mars is it's about a cop in the 70s, right? And supernatural-esque kind of stuff happens. Stuff that makes you really question, like, what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Well, the last episode, it comes to a head, and he wakes up on a spaceship. And the thing is that the trip from Earth to Mars is so long, they had to put him in, like, this simulated virtual reality so he didn't go crazy on the trip.
Okay.
But, like, nothing else really makes sense. It's like, so everything that I was just doing, that you've been invested in this show for how many ever episodes, didn't matter. Like, didn't matter at all. Because no matter what happened, I was going to wake up. So, and that's what I'm saying. It's such a paradigm shift in the world that you don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping this comic doesn't do anything remotely like that, because I think comics as a genre think they can get away with a little bit more stuff like that. Like, and I'll admit, there's stuff you can get away with in books that when they translate them to movies, they just don't work. So,
oh yeah, that's one of the reasons when it comes to comic book movies, I hate the people who are like, well, it's not like this in the comic. Of course it's not, because you have 700 issues of Batman to explain things that have happened. They've got 3 movies. You can't do the same thing. You have to change these worlds so it makes more sense. And it's the same way with the Avengers and all these other movies. You have to just kind of cut some stuff out, make leeway with characters. Some characters don't translate well to the modern era anyways. Like, try putting the Wasp and Giant Man into one of these Avengers movies. They just don't fit. So they don't use these characters. And so, between genres, you do have to change things. So that's just one of those things that I agree with you, especially written in books. A great example of that's Game of Thrones. If you've read the books and you've watched the TV show, they have to change some things for the TV show because it just doesn't translate well from the written word.
Sure.
In most books, you have narrators telling you all this, doing internal monologues for characters. You don't have that in TV shows, And oftentimes now, you don't have it in comics like you used to either. So
I agree. The field kind of sets it up though where we know there's more to it. And I'm glad they kind of already established that in the first issue. We already know that there are multiple groups hunting down the main character. We don't know his name or anything. Tidy Whitey's guy, but we know there's at least a biker gang and this guy, and then whoever's on the cell phone. So there's at least 3 different groups that are either hunting him down or trying to find him. And then from the flashback we get, it looks like he is some kind of scientist or something. He was involved in some type of military-esque program. So he seems important. And it what I like about that is that they've already established, to anyone who's paying attention, they're like, hey, this is a lot bigger, and there's a lot going on. And we're going to give you a little bit of a taste of what is to come. So I'm glad that they kind of set that up and established it. I'm really looking forward to the second issue. I can't help but draw a little bit of a parallel to a particular TV show with this one. Just in the guy and his Tidy Whitey's in the field, scientist potentially, and he's got kind of, if you look at the character, he's got the glasses and the kind of scraggly hair.
I was trying to think of where you're going with it, but now I see what you're saying.
And I don't, I think he had a goatee.
I don't remember.
He does. He has it looks like a 2 or 3 days growth, beard. So, like I said, that was one of the first things I thought of when I saw the image and him running through the field and all that. But anyway,
well, we'll see. I think it's the first issue was enough that I'm interested that I'll read, the next issues that come out to see where they go with the story.
Yeah.
Do we know how long it's supposed to be? It's like a mini series, right?
No, I didn't see a listing. Sometimes they'll put ongoing, and sometimes they'll put
one of 6
limited. Yeah. But Sheltered is still one that I from everything I've read, it has a set issue number, and the last one I saw, some people said they thought it was going to be around 18 issues, but I haven't seen anything on this one.
Okay. Well, it's still pretty young, so
right.
Maybe even Brisson doesn't know at this point how long it's going to be, and that might be why it's like that.
Right. And I don't mind that to a certain degree, because I think as we talked about, with Garth Ennis, originally he had planned, he planned The Boys out in full before he even supposedly before he finished the first couple of issues, but
he consistently does that, though. I think he also did it with Preacher, if I remember correctly.
Right.
He had a conclusion he was working toward.
Yeah, but my thing is that he originally said it was going to be 68 issues long, and then it ended up having to be 72. And the reason he said that is there were parts that, even though he had it planned out, it took him longer to get through certain story arcs than he thought it would. So I don't mind not. I like it when they tell me, hey, we think it's going to be about 60 issues, but I don't require anyone to tell me, it's going to be this exact number of issues, because I know sometimes you need an extra issue to wrap stuff up, and I like when comics wrap stuff up. I don't mind if the last issue was the big event's already happened, but we want to show you what everybody did afterwards and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll have to see, though, what they decide to do with this one and how long it's going to go on.
Right.
But I look forward to it.
Yeah. What about games this week? What are we doing?
Well, I want to talk about a genre of game.
All right.
So I think we all remember from when we were young the simulator games, was it specifically Sim City.
Yeah.
Okay. So I remember playing Sim City on a Mac when I was at school, on my Super Nintendo, even on my computer years later when SimCity 3 and 4 came out.
Yeah, I had a lot of time put into, I think it was Super SimCity on the SNES.
Yeah, that's it.
And the only reason I remember that one so well is because once I made a city, I would have Bowser come in and destroy it.
Yes, Bowser. I remember I would let my Super Nintendo run all night so it could accumulate money, and I'd wake up and like some catastrophe had happened. I'd be like, "Damn it!" So mad because it just ruined everything. But yeah, and I think that from SimCity, a lot of other simulator games have spawned off over the years. Even SimCity was originally owned by Sid Meier, and it came from that. You had Sims, which was you simulating a person's life. Mm-hmm. And that game, we all know, that's a hugely popular game. I think it's still one of the most popular games of all time is The Sims, that whole group.
I was actually reading the other day how it's also one of the biggest money sinks. I didn't realize when a Sims games come out, you're paying $40 for the Sims game or whatever, and then they apparently have just a crap load of expansions that all cost like $15 to $20 a piece. I never realized how many of those came out.
And some of those expansions too don't really add any major content. They just add more clothes or more furniture.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they'll add stuff crazy like now there's ghosts and vampires. It's like, what does that have to do with being a person?
One of the YouTubers I follow, she does a Sims series from time to time whenever there's a new expansion. Mm-hmm. And one of the big ones she did is they let the Sims go to college.
Yeah.
And I'll admit they added a lot of stuff, but even she was saying, you can tell where they copied and pasted a lot of the stuff. So
yeah, and some of the expansions are a lot bigger than others. That one was a big one because it added a whole nother section of life. So you could start off as a college kid and then go into something rather than just starting off as an adult.
Right.
But all these simulation games, particularly from the Sid Meier's that had these, there's always been other types of ones too. We have I think it's called Open Transport, which is basically a transportation simulator. So you create bus systems and train systems that can transport goods and people between cities and stuff like that.
Sure.
And we've even gotten these simulators that do things like Euro Truck Simulator. You basically just sit in a big rig and you drive it from European city to European city delivering goods. Yeah. And you get paid depending on how well you do and the number of tickets you don't get.
Yeah. And also the train simulators. I've seen for the last few years they've had one come out each year for those.
And there's a lot of simulators we don't even see in America because they're mostly European, like Farming Simulator. That's a huge one, and it's actually a really fun game, which is crazy to say that I had fun playing a Farming Simulator game.
Wait, so you've actually played this Farming Simulator?
Yeah, I played a demo of it. It's hard. It's not simple as I'm just going to put a farm down and put a tractor, and there it goes. It's no, you have to be concerned about weather, and you have to be concerned about making sure there's enough water and there's no pests, and that you put certain crops in certain places because certain things destroy the soil over time.
That sounds like work.
Well, that's what simulation games tend to be.
I don't... Okay. Would you consider a Tamagotchi like a simulator, like a miniature simulator game?
Possibly.
Because it seems like work also, and you're...
Yeah.
I know it's small and you don't do much with it, but you're simulating feeding this thing, and I know some of them you have to walk the thing and train it and all that.
Yeah. I think a Tamagotchi could be considered a type of simulator. It's like a parent simulator.
Yeah.
But these simulator games have kind of started going into a weird direction, as if a farming and truck driving simulator weren't weird enough. Get your meth fix on the road. Actually, It's not part of the game, but it should be. Part of Euro Truck Simulator, the hidden stuff is finding the best gas stations to stop at to buy meth and hookers. But these simulators are getting to a really odd place where you have these ones like the Goat Simulator that came out.
Yeah, I saw a lot of gameplay on that one.
Yeah, and it's not really simulating life as a goat. It's making fun of these types of simulators, and you do things like run around and smash stuff, and you can lick things with your tongue and drag them wherever you want, and do these super crazy jumps, and you get points based on how high you can jump and how much stuff you destroy. And then you can even turn into other types of animals, or I think you can turn into giraffes and ostriches and all sorts of weird stuff.
Oh, I saw the ostrich, yeah.
Yeah, you can turn into a giraffe. You can even become like a demonic goat if you bring enough people to a sacrificial pit. You know, or you can become an angelic goat if you don't break anything for 5 minutes.
There's a jetpack you can get as the goat and fly around.
You can actually, there's a fight club you can enter as a goat. And
what?
If you beat all the goats, you become like this muscle-bound goat. Yeah.
What?
It's Goat Fight Club.
Oh,
yeah, that. Man. And so these simulators have started getting really weird. It's like, I know there are still serious ones that are coming out. Like their Farm Simulator is pretty consistent. And so is, some of the other ones, like you said, the train simulators and the flight simulators are fairly consistent.
Yeah, there's the mix also that's like the middle ground between the kind of realistic simulators and like Goat Simulator. Like there's one called Warehouse and Logistics Simulator. Have you seen that one?
I don't think I have.
It's exactly what you think it is. You drive a forklift and you manage a warehouse and you do all this stuff as if you worked in a warehouse. And I was like, why? To me, it seems so mundane. And I'm not saying video games have to be about escapism, because that's not true. But it just didn't seem like, why would I want to do this simulator where I have this job, driving around a forklift? But then I look, to make the game fun, there's a zombie mode where your warehouse is being invaded by zombies. This is not even the main part of the main game. This is just an extra thing that they added on. And so you have to use your forklift to defend the warehouse from the zombies. And that's, if you go look it up on YouTube, that's what most of the people doing the gameplay stuff are doing, is the zombie part.
That sounds like a game that was actually designed for the purpose of teaching people how to function inside of a warehouse and things to do. And then they were like, we could actually make some money on this, so let's just put zombies in there. And
so it's like the military training game that ended up becoming, they bought the rights to it and it became some actual shooter. I can't think of the name.
U.S. Army?
It's something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that was the original one. That game was amazing back in the day.
Yeah, I just remember reading about it, how like they made it to see if they could use it to train soldiers, and then somebody was like, this is actually a lot of fun.
Yeah. But part of the thing with these simulator games is I'm starting to wonder, and you mentioned it, if maybe the reason they're starting to go this kind of weird, goofy route is YouTube and Let's Players. Maybe these Let's Players, in making these games entertaining, are making them, actually successful. I think an example of that would be Surgeon Simulator.
Oh, sure,
It was released as a free game, and a bunch of people started playing it on YouTube, and then the next thing you know is they actually put it on Steam, and there have been a lot of expansions that have been put out for it, and it's probably made a ton of money, truthfully. And it's
that
fun.
Game is crazy. I've played that one.
And it's really not a simulator of any kind. It's just called a simulator because of what you're doing is surgery.
Yeah.
But there are some of these other simulators, like there's a new one I just saw called Viscera Cleanup.
Oh, yeah.
You're a janitor on a space station, and you're simulating this. You simulate a janitor on a space station cleaning up after, like, a quake match has occurred.
Right. I was about to say, let's be honest. You're the guy cleaning up after the aliens and the Marines have all gone through and killed each other.
Yep.
And they're like, we still kind of want this space station to be operational. Could you get a mop?
Yeah. And you have to, like, clean up the blood and throw away the body parts and put them in the incinerator to get rid of them.
And it looks really difficult with the, like, I saw one part where they were using the mechanics to actually hold up the trash can with one hand and throw away trash. Like, it actually looked like it wasn't an easy thing.
Yeah, some of the video I saw for it, like, after you use your mop, you have to put it in the water bucket to clean it off so you can wipe up more blood. But the problem now is that the bucket's full of bloody water, so if you accidentally spill it, you spill the blood back all over the place. You have to clean it again. So some of the guys I was watching play on YouTube, they kept bumping into each other's buckets and making bigger messes than there were to begin with. They were getting extremely angry with each other, just screaming about it.
Whoa, wait. How many people can you have playing this game at the same time?
They had 3. They probably can do more.
That actually could be awesome.
Yeah. But once again, it goes to, are these games really good, or are they selling because people on YouTube are playing them? People think they look funny, and then they buy them, and you probably really only have about an hour to 2 hours of gameplay that's going to keep you fully interested in it.
I think this is my biggest problem. Like, okay, a lot of the serious ones, like, I've seen people play the train simulator game. I have no interest. I had none.
But see, for some people, that's very interesting because there's a level of depth in that game that transcends most other games. Like, you would not believe how in depth some of these original simulators could be, like the train one and the flight one, and even SimCity.
Yeah, I know SimCity had a lot of micromanaging, and if you could do SimCity, you could multitask. But like the plane simulators, definitely, I know were very hard, and I don't doubt that. I know someone who loved the Euro Truck simulator so much that he bought a steering wheel for his computer.
Oh my god!
And I'm serious. It's like an arcade steering wheel, but he liked those games so much that he bought the steering wheel because to him it was a lot of fun. And this is my thing, and maybe this is just me. I can't drive, and I would think a driving simulator might actually be fun to me because it's something I don't do. I don't, I've driven maybe twice in my entire life, and that was not even a total of a mile. But for him, who drives every day to work, I'm like, how is that fun?
That game's weird because it's very low key. Like, you're just driving. It's not like you're racing. In fact, you're trying to drive as safe as possible and make sure you don't miss turns or hit anything or get in accidents or even speed and get tickets.
But you do have a destination and a time you have to reach the destination, so it kind of builds the tension. Mm-hmm. You want to be safe, but you also want to get there on time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a really weird mix for that game. But, these Sims, I think a large part of them is that, like I said, the original simulator games were very detailed. Even The Sims had a lot of detail to it. SimCity, Train Simulator, the Microsoft Flight Simulator back in the day. There's a lot of detail that went into those games. But these new simulators are more like, hey, I got a quirky idea. Why don't we just have people play as a goat and let him do all sorts of ridiculous goat stuff? And we'll just call it Goat Simulator. And they'll probably get about an hour's worth of play out of it, and we'll charge them $10. And a bunch of people on YouTube will play it because it is hilarious to watch. But I have a feeling like once you've watched people do some of the hilarious stuff, it's not nearly that funny anymore to play.
I think the Euro Truck Simulator is missing out on a lot of money, and I'm gonna tell you how. Think of an expansion, but hear me out on this.
Okay.
It's the Smokey and the Bandit expansion. You've seen Smokey and the Bandit, right?
I have.
All
have.
Right.
Back in the day. Long time ago.
So Eastbound and Down and all that, got to get to Texas or whatever in a certain amount of time. I think we could actually make this a really good expansion for this game.
I really just add zombies in. That seems to be a key for any game. If you need to do an expansion, just do the zombie expansion.
Yeah. Well, like the one we were just talking about, the space station cleanup, the visceral game. Mm-hmm. I just imagine like there's probably something. If I were designing that game, I would have built in something where if you accidentally stay in one area too long, or if you, trigger something, there's that one alien that the Marines didn't mop up, and he just comes out and starts chasing you.
Well, things can explode, like grenades and things that might not have gone off. There are things that will still explode in there sometimes, watching the people play it.
Oh, man.
But, I think, and another thing with these games too is like even the Goat Simulator game even says this in its review that they put up in Steam, that we removed only the bugs that would crash the game, but left all the others that are hilarious.
And I'm sure bugs can be really hilarious, but a lot, like at least 2 or 3 of the people I watched, because I watched several of those Goat Simulator videos on YouTube.
Yeah,
multiple times the game crashed on them.
Yeah.
And so they say that, but I wonder
how... Or a bug would occur where they couldn't progress any further in the game. They'd have to restart it. I saw that happen a lot, too.
Yeah. But like I said, one guy that was playing, I know at least twice when I was watching, it, just straight up crashed. It was just basically... It wasn't like a simple, I'm stuck, or, I'm moving, but the world's not moving, stuff like that. No, it was a straight up just crashed error,
Yeah. And so it kind of makes me wonder if people making these cute, funny little simulator in quotation mark games, if they're like, well, I could just make a crappily coded game and that's going to be fine because I can just say that that's a feature.
Yeah.
That the guy's head gets stuck in walls and his neck extends because of the ragdoll physics or whatever.
And even if even if that's not the case, I hate to say it, but eventually it's going to get to the point where that's going to become annoying.
Oh, I already
There's
kind
a
of think
fine
it's
line.
annoying.
Yeah.
There's another animal simulator game that's been kickstarted called Bear Simulator.
Oh yeah.
And you basically just walk around being a bear. I mean, there looks like there are quirks to it, like there's some kind of monsters and stuff you have to fight or avoid. But still, it's another one of these kind of goofy simulator games like Goat Simulator.
That's just weird. Here's my thing. Like, I bought Surgeon Simulator because it was like $2. You know.
Yeah.
And Goat Simulator, I'll probably buy it when it gets to be like $2.
$2.
Here's my thing about though. Surgeon Simulator, I played for about 2 hours. So I basically paid $1 an hour. And I think I uninstalled it and haven't touched it again. I'm pretty sure. And Goat Simulator, I do want to play it. It looks fun. It's probably going to be fun for like 3 or 4 hours. I might, if I have a friend over, I'll be like, hey, let me show you this crazy game. But
yeah.
I can't imagine paying more than $2 or $3 for something like that. And I think you and I the other day were actually talking about, you know, I don't mind paying $60 or $40 or $20 if I feel like I'm going to get $60, you know, worth out of the game. Like,
exactly.
The last game I paid $60 for was Grand Theft Auto 5, but I know for a fact I will get $60 and probably more the way I play those games worth of value out of it. But something like Surgeon Simulator, if I'd paid even $10 for it, I probably would have been kind of like, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, I agree completely, and that's kind of how I think these simulator games are, is that these are not games that you can play long-term or put a lot of effort into or anything like that. And they try to falsely make them long by saying, oh, here's this achievement you should get by doing this crazy thing that's going to take you 2 hours to try to find all 100 of these little idols that are hidden throughout this one map in the game. Because there's only a map that I've seen for Goat Simulator.
I think that's like their biggest thing. If I were them, I would quickly be doing like a either free or 99 cent or something like that. Like, here's another map.
Banking money that they're going to do another map, but it's not going to be free. It'll probably be cheap, but it'll be something you pay for.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, they got to make their money somehow. But
well, they could make it by making a good game that actually has long-term playability.
That is true.
You know,
that's an odd notion to stay at age.
Who am I to question these developers?
Yeah. Well, here's my thing. Like, I know why. I know there's all these arguments for why. It's really hard to keep an indie game in development for much longer than what you absolutely need to get it done.
Yeah.
Because money, you know, you got. I mean, I understand. I've read all the documentaries and stuff about people like, you know, oh, well, I had like 10 people working for free because I couldn't pay them and all this, so I had to get it out, or we had to do the Kickstarter or whatever. I understand all that. But I think you're right. I think if you put some longevity behind the game, you know, find ways to make it where people can play more. If you can get that out, then you have the help with the YouTube and stuff, like people playing it. Then people are not going to feel as bad about paying $10 instead of $2 for your game. And that'll help.
Yeah. True. Well, there you go. That's the simulator discussion. Yeah. We could have just simulated the simulator discussion.
And I'm pretty sure we haven't seen the end of this simulator.
No.
I'm not going to call it a fad because it's been around for a while. It's not a fad, but
what the fad of the goofy simulator?
Yeah, I think the fad is all these new simulators that are coming out, like
Bear Simulator.
Yeah, I don't know, like
Simulator.
I'm not saying like, oh, I dislike simulator games, because there are some like that Visceral one. I'm like, I might play that for a little bit, but you know, none of them so far.
The key is not at the price they're selling it for.
Yeah, and none of them so far have been like, oh, that's a great game.
Yeah, because like Goat Simulator is $10, and Viscera is, I'm looking it up really quick.
It's probably 10.
Viscera's it's 8, so that's not too bad. And there's a couple of expansions for it. Like there's a Santa's Rampage one, and then there's also a free one. I think if you bought Shadow Warrior, you got one for that too.
I'm not cleaning up the North Pole. I'm not.
No. Bunch of dead elves.
Yeah, just a quick plug. I hear the new Shadow Warrior game is really awesome.
I have played that, and that game is amazing.
Yeah, I need to pick that up. And that you simulate chopping people to bits.
Oh yeah. You simulate playing a badass who goes around making racist comments and eating Chinese food. And
so it's just like the original. Wait, does he still say you want to watch Wang? Watch Wang.
I don't remember. He has a lot of weird little sayings.
Yeah.
There are, in some of the Easter eggs in the game, like, in the original Shadow Warrior, you could find the 8-bit girls like hidden somewhere bathing.
Yeah.
They're in this game as 8-bit characters.
Nice.
And you'll hear the sound, and I'll be like, "There's one of them around. I don't know where they're at," but you'll hear the la 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 la, and I'm like, "Oh my god, where are they?"
That's hilarious. Got to try that.
It's pretty good. But all right, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Comics and Controllers. So if you want to email us, send us any questions or stories you want us to talk about, you can send those to comicsandcontrollers@gmail.com. If you want to follow me, you can check me out on Twitter. I'm at ZombieJesus here. Where can they follow you at, Steven?
On Twitter as well, at Stephen Wilds.
All right, so there you go. Until next time, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Steven.
You guys have a good one.